What's up everybody, Jeff here, and ever since Madness of Malifaux came out, a bunch of people have been asking me to just spoil the whole story. And well, it's been out for long enough now, so I think that's what we're going to do. This isn't going to be like a lot of my other videos, because most of those models haven't come out yet. So I'm just going to take you through a quick summary of the story, with minimal visuals, just so you have an idea of what happened. Of course, I highly recommend you go read it for yourself instead of watching this. And if you want to learn a little bit more about some of the stuff that's mentioned, then check out the 2 videos I did recently, giving a bit more context and covering some of the Easter eggs and references. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe, come hang out on the Discord, and if you want to have a say in some of the content that I have coming up, then head over to the Patreon, because I've been putting up polls to let people decide some of the subjects for the content that's coming up. But with that, let's get into Madness of Malifaux. Governor General Marlow sits in a partially destroyed office in his mansion, overlooking the train tracks. Several of his aides come in to report to him and tell him that the King's Empire has sent Harold Tull and his company to help provide support to the guild. They also mention that something's going on in Japan, though they don't know the details, and one of the aides notices a copy of the Tattler and mentions that it seems to be declining in quality as of late. They also report that Cornelius Base is hunting down Parker Barrows, and that Karis is still a problem, as she's rallying the crazies that have cropped up under the Burning Man. Marlow had heard rumors that Lady Justice and the Marshals had been off on personal missions, and Lucius is still absent. He says that he hopes Tull is as impressive as he's heard, and comments that he and his company are notorious. They then hear a train whistle, signaling that the man has arrived. Damien Ravencroft walks through a crowd, and soon Colette falls in line next to him. They greet each other, and she hands him a copy of the Flamme, and warns him about what happens to people who read it. Damian replies that his time in the Yellow Crypt should have made him immune to the book's power, and he hands her an envelope of payment before the woman turns to leave. Damian stops her and tells her that he has one more thing, and hands her a letter from Dr. Ramos. Colette is surprised to find that he is alive, and asks Damian if Ramos put him in charge of his affairs in Malifaux. He says no, but explains that their interests had aligned a few times in the past, and Ramos would bring him problems that he couldn't solve. But Damian is his own man. He then tells Colette that perhaps it's time that their interests align, and adds that the present chaos brought on by the Burning Man is an opportunity. Colette smiles and says that she'll reach out, and then disappears into the crowd. Damian wonders what he can learn from this book, and is soon approached by a group of street toughs. He says they don't want what he has, and he drops his cloak, but the men persist, so he pulls out his sword, Die Thou Unsung, and the men quickly run away. He heads to a house in the quarantine zone, entering into a secret door, where he finds Bellaventine Thorpe. She asks if Colette delivered, and he says yes, pulling out the small book. She tells him that Ledger and Marco had made themselves scarce when they heard what he would be bringing back. She asks if the other Arcanists know what he's up to. He says they all have their own troubles, and mentions that he heard that Sandeep seems to have failed one of his apprentices, and he heard mention of the name Loth Bot. After putting on protective gear, he opens the book, and he can see magic pouring out of it. Bella asks if this is really a good idea, and he says it'll be fine, but if she does find him blathering about the Burning Man, that she should put her sword to good use. Bella then tells him that more things came in, and he finds a piece of paper that has a time and a location written on it. He suddenly starts rushing to collect his things to leave, and tells her that if he doesn't return, she should tell her contacts in the 10 Thunders that they have a rat. Bella then grabs her pistol and tells him that if it's dangerous, she's going with him. Nikita walks for 3 days through the forest with a small group of her followers. They soon reach the Black Eyrie, and she tells everyone in the group to wait, except for one shaman. They venture further, and when they get to the right place, she tells him to call out to them. The shaman starts chanting, and soon his body strains and blood starts shooting out. He's then dragged away by an invisible force, and she hears a voice telling her that her offer has been accepted. 13 figures emerge from the forest, and one of them asks her why she has come. Nikita says that Titania is rising, and the Burning Man is dangerous, and then tells them that they need to teach her the dread art. A new voice is heard, telling her that they must do nothing, as a 14th figure approaches, the Sigarax. Nikita bows in spite of her anger, and reiterates that she does not know how much longer they will last without this knowledge. He tells her that her desperation has blinded her, and the dread art must never be used. He turns to leave, but she cuts him off, and tells him, we must wake him. He asks if she's prepared to pay the price, and she says that she did not come alone. The Sycorax replies that Atharak will take her. Governor General Marlow approaches the train station as machines and weapons are unloaded. He finds Hoffman and thanks him for taking the time, as he is an expert, and Marlow wants his appraisal of this unit's potential. Hoffman tells Marlow that he knows Tull has a reputation for collateral damage, and he's worried that the city can't handle it. The Governor General tells him that it's better they rebuild the city they control than they govern its ashes. Tull emerges and they approach, and the man shakes Marlow's hand and then asks where the bathroom is. They tell him that there's one in the building, and as he turns to leave, one of Marlow's assistants tells him surely he can wait for the Governor General. Tull turns back embarrassed, having not known who he was speaking to, and shakes the man's hand before giving him an apology. Marlow introduces Hoffman, and Tull says he's glad he'll be working with another Englishman. Tull asks one of his soldiers if she's seen Walter, and then Marlow tells him that he and his squadron commanders are expected in the Enclave. Tull adds, and Walter, and Marlow then tells his assistant to add Walter to the itinerary. Tull then heads off to go to the bathroom, and Marlow tells Hoffman that Tull isn't what he expected. They then see a black cat emerge from the iron ram. One of the assistants comments that they don't get many strays around here, but Hoffman notices that it has a collar. He bends down to check it, and then rubs his eyes in frustration. The assistant asks him what it says, and he tells him that the cat's name is Walter. Tiri watches as an Awa is prepared for a burial. They remove his implants from his body, as what remains of the corpse crumbles to ash. Sharufe had cursed their people, and with his return, their flesh has continued to turn to ash, crumbling from the inside out. There's only so much they can do to slow the curse. To stop it, they have to stop Sharufe. Tiri walks to the elder's tent. She feels like she doesn't belong, as she's very young to be leading their people, but she was chosen to lead. She goes inside and goes to her grandmother's bedside, where machines are keeping the old woman alive. Tiri expresses doubt about having left their sanctuary to confront Sharufe, and speculates that it might be getting worse as they get closer. Her grandmother tells her that they would have all died in the sanctuary had they stayed, and the Awa would now be gone. Lin Li eats noodles at a restaurant in the Little Kingdom. Her boyfriend meets her, and she tells him that she's going to meet with the Oyabun, but she doesn't know why. She had been researching the Kimono for the Thunders since they re-emerged, and her boyfriend tells her that no one has seen Misaki since the Burning Man, and that they think she's gone crazy. Lin goes to the Katanaka trading house, and is led inside to Misaki's sanctum. The Oyabun greets her, and they sit at a table, where she thanks the woman for her research into the Kimono. Lin tells her that it's been her pleasure, and then Misaki has an outburst, yelling at her father, who isn't really there. When she calms down, she tells Lin that her people are to continue looking into the Kimono, but she wants Lin to start researching the Burning Man. Lin says that the library only has information about the past. There's nothing in there about the Burning Man. Misaki says that their portion of the library, the Red Library, has been protected from the Burning Man, but the rest of the library has not. Lin tells her that the library is uncharted, and those who venture deeper in don't come back. The Oyabun counters that they're running out of time, and that she is to obey. She then softens her tone and explains that Lin has a connection with the library, and it will protect her. The Thunders wouldn't tell her to do something that would put her at risk. The woman says she will do as she's told and bows. As she gets up to leave, Misaki tells her that she expects her silence about her condition. She wouldn't want the woman to have to go missing. Lin Li returns to the library. It's animated and bright, in stark contrast with how it used to be under its last caretaker. Misaki had replaced him with Lin, after she staged her coup against her father. Lin sits down and starts reading, before Miya Murakami walks in. Lin tells the older woman that she's to continue her research by herself, as she has a new assignment. Miya asks if her meeting with the Oyabun went well, and she tells the woman that she's looking into the Burning Man. Miya recommends that she looks into the section of the library about the history of magic, since the Burning Man seems to be burning his way back through time. When Lin leaves, Miya grabs some of her things, and then frowns at one of the small creatures that have come to be known as booklights. The library's old caretaker would never have tolerated such frivolity, but it's too late to be worried about that. At least Lin had listened to her, and wouldn't be in the way. Lin heads into the Red Library, and then into the Library of All Things. She finds a booklight, and follows it, hoping it will lead her to what she needs. After walking down a few aisles, she finds a book on pre-breach magic. As she looks at it, she starts to smell smoke, and looks down at her lantern, fearing she may have tipped it over, but realizes that it's safe in its spot. She soon notices that the burning seems to be coming from inside the book, and she tries to put out the fire, but it's no use. She then realizes that the book isn't being consumed, and opens it to find that only the words are burning, not the pages. What's more, the words are actually being replaced with new words, as a new reality is recorded, as the Burning Man burns its way through time. She sees another book doing the same thing, and then walks into another aisle to see the Burning Man rewriting history. Damian had been receiving mysterious letters for months. Some had magical secrets from books, and he wanted to see those books, and now he was finally getting his chance. He and Belle arrive in a small alley, and he tells the woman that this is the place. They start to argue about it being a trap, but soon a brick wall opens, and a small woman appears. She beckons them through, and they come inside, to find a huge library, as the bookshelf closes behind them. She introduces herself as Miya Murakami, and Damien marvels over the shelves of books. He asks why she let him in, and she says that her reasons are her own, but that their interests in opposing the Burning Man have aligned. He says he should have brought food, as he's going to need to be here all night, and she tells him that he only has 20 or 30 minutes, as there is another guardian, and she can't know that they are in here. Damien is disappointed, but she tells him that the library will guide him to what he needs. He just needs to focus on the problem. He picks up a random book, and when he opens it, the letters burn and rewrite themselves. Damien smiles. As Lin Li grows tired, she decides to turn in for the night. She notices her booklight acting strangely, looking down a corridor with a grimace. She takes a small blade out of her bag, and goes to investigate. Miya uses magic to copy text out of several books onto blank parchment. Damien suggests he just take some of the books with him, but Miya tells him the library wouldn't allow it. Anyone who did so would be banished from the library forever. They hear a crash, and she warns that they're running out of time. The library is aware of their presence. Damien hands her 2 more books, and tells her to copy certain passages. He turns away from Miya with a smile. He doesn't need those books. It's information he already knows by heart, but it would take her time, and he was going after what he really wanted. Information about the tyrants. He focuses on the question and walks into the bookshelves until he can barely see the women. He then reaches out and takes a book. It's called Witness the End. He then secretly slips it into his pocket. Mia comes up behind him and asks what he's doing. He follows her back, and she says that they have to go, as she reopens the secret door. He thanks the woman, and when it closes, he tells Bella that he doesn't think they'll ever see her again. Daciel watches as the guild marshals its troops in the courtyard in front of the Enclave. Crit approaches him, and they discuss how Maxine had predicted the Burning Man would be arriving soon, and in the city. An analyst approaches Crit and hands her orders from Marlow. She's not to use fire for fear of burning down the city. Crit is angry, but soon Tull emerges, with a group of men marching in a disorderly fashion. Daciel asks him if this is how they're taught to march in the King's Empire, and Tull shoots back that marching doesn't matter when the shooting starts, and he gets paid for the shooting part. Tull asks if they all get shiny masks, motioning to Sonya's hip, and Daciel takes a step back as Sonya approaches Tull, seething with rage. She offers to get him a mask and to make sure that he needs one. Tull stammers a response, but Daciel steps in, and the man soon apologizes. But Hoffman soon calls out, "Enough playing around," and Sonya turns back to her hunters. Tull turns to Daciel and asks if Sonya is seeing anyone, and the man just shakes his head. Tull looks over a peacekeeper as they get ready for battle. They're overlooking the quarantine zone, and the man notices a tower in the distance and tries to estimate the range to it. Hoffman then approaches, and he asks them to watch their fire, as his constructs take a long time to repair. Tull says no problem, he just needs to keep his machines away from where Tull wants to shoot. Hoffman does not laugh at his joke. Soon the sky starts to ripple, and the Burning Man appears, opening portals and spilling monsters out onto the rooftops. Tull fires a shot that dissolves as it comes in contact with the Burning Man, and Hoffman asks him what the hell he's doing. Tull replies that it never works, but he wants the Burning Man to know what he's dealing with. The engineer says that Tull's orders are to keep the skies clear, while Hoffman and his constructs advance. Tull then orders the Rocketeers into the air. Two gremlins sit on the shore fishing. They discuss who has ever caught the biggest fish, before one of them says that he thinks he has the record now. They both see a huge creature on the end of his line, and soon the gulf erupts in flames, as they see a deluge of huge creatures moving towards the shore. As the battle rages, Hoffman speculates that it might be a trap, as the monsters seem to be trying to bait them in. Tull agrees, as he lets off a round with a grenade launcher in response to a signal flare. Hoffman gets a message on the ether box, and soon, a group of horrors start pouring out of a nearby shop. Tull tries to turn his launcher on them, but it's too late, so Hoffman jumps in and starts pummeling them with his suit. When things calm down, he tells Tull he has to go reinforce their southern flank. Tull says he can handle it, and moves his men to clear out a path to a hilltop, where he can set up his cannons. As he readies the artillery, he says that they'll give covering fire to Hoffman, and a soldier asks if they know where the man is. Tull says they'll figure it out, and he does some calculations on a map based on the location of 3 of the biggest portals to try to triangulate the concentration of enemy forces. They find a building in the middle of all the chaos, where they see a horde of cultists surrounding a few constructs, and they start to open up with the cannons. Machines and cultists are caught in the barrage, and portals start to pop closed as the cultist rituals are interrupted. When the dust settles, he walks towards the battle, and he sees dead cultists, machines, and their controllers laying on the floor. It was a victory. Collateral damage was part of life, but Tull knew he would hear about this. He looks over the rubble, and soon finds Hoffman struggling to unbury himself from a collapsed building. Tull greets him, and Hoffman starts berating the man, so Tull counters that the cultists tried to pull a fast one, attacking one area before storming a different one. Hoffman stands up and yells that he got their people killed, and that they have policies and procedures to prevent things like this from happening. Tull shoots back that he would be dead if Tull hadn't disregarded those policies, and he did what needed to be done. Hoffman says he'll be putting this in his report to the Governor General, and Tull says good, now they should get back to the Enclave to celebrate their victory. Nikita and her company follow Atharak for hours until they encounter strange-looking creatures. They look like desiccated Nephilim, neither dead nor alive. Nikita raises her voice and tells them to bow to their queen. Some of them do as she says, but most of them do not. Atharak tells her that they follow different ways, and a new voice chimes in and says that she is surrounded but still can't hold her tongue. Nikita draws her sword and shouts a challenge. A dryad covered in moss and fungus emerges, and Nikita gets suspicious, as the dryads are followers of Titania. She knows she can't kill a member of the Aeda Kithae unless she's certain, so she turns to Atharak and accuses him of trying to kill her to let Titania take over. The dryad tells her not to speak that name, and Nikita pauses, and then asks him what his feud is with Titania. Gwyll says he was there when Titania opened Kythera. He remembers every moment of that horrible day. He asks Nikita why she wants to awaken him, and the Nephilim replies that she wants to see the Autumn Court burn. Gwyll is satisfied, and leads her party to a series of ruins made out of rocks and brass. Gwyl's people position Nikita and her followers on the rocks, and then draw their blades and plunge them into the half-bloods and Nephilim. Nikita doesn't flinch. She knew the cost. As her followers' blood drains, Atherak offers Nikita a knife and tells her a queen's blood is needed. She takes the knife and cuts herself, and her blood pours onto the stones until she starts to feel weak and lightheaded. As she clears her vision, she sees a pit and then starts to hear breathing. Slowly, a huge but emaciated figure emerges and starts feasting on the body of the sacrifices. When he's done, Nikita looks up at him and tells him that his queen calls for him. Castor asks where her sister is, and she tells him that she's dead. She is the queen now. He asks why she's there, and she starts telling him what he's missed over the last century. Two men from the Explorer Society ride in a carriage, and one asks the other what their contact's name is. He tells him that it's Parson, and he has extensive knowledge of ancient technology, but he seems to have been reluctant to meet in person so far. Their carriage stops, and they get out to find that they're at the top of a mountain, and a figure emerges with blue skin and a strange head. He identifies himself as Parson, and leads them into the cave, as one of the men explained to the other who the Awa are. Parson tells him that he is afflicted by a curse from Sharufe, but that heat helps slow its progress. They ask what he wanted to show them, and remind him that they pay handsomely for any artifacts, but Parson tells them that what he wants to show them is not for sale. He leads them into a room with a dying woman, as well as Tiri and her guard. They ask about the curse, and Tiri tells them that they hid away from Sharufe to slow the curse, but he has returned. The men realize she's referring to the Burning Man, and Tiri says they trapped him before, and will do it again. The men tell her that he commands an army of cultists, and that they can't hope to face him alone. Tiri says she isn't alone, and leads him out a back door, where they find a huge caravan of Awa, along with weapons and constructs. Damian spent weeks reading the book from the library, and cross-referencing it with the copy of the Flamme. He and Bella walk up the side of a cold mountain, and finally find an opening in the cliffside. Bella asks him if they're doing the right thing, and Damian tells her she can turn back if she wants. She snorts and continues with him. They go inside and find a large cavern lined with soulstone deposits. He looks over some of the soulstones and says that Crid and Ramos fought over these, but the real power is hidden. He pulls out the book and reads as something dark moves beneath the ice. He tells Bella to burn a rune into the wall, and then produces a small mechanical device that hums. It fills the whole room with vibration, and then goes silent. The soulstones start to rattle and move, taking a shape, and soon limbs and a face emerge. It takes the rough shape of a man, and Damian reaches out his hand, asking if he is Loeth Bot. He tells the man that they both came to Malifaux for a purpose, and both had something taken away from them. He believes that he knows how to right the wrong, but he needs her help. The geode is the lock, and Loeth is the key. Bella asks who this is, and Damian explains what happened to Loeth, and then returns to asking for the man's help. Bella feels sympathy and cuts the man off, with sadness on her face, and asks the creature if there's anything that they can do for him. Damian tells her that the man had a daughter, and then turns to the golem and tells him that they can see to it that his daughter is taken care of. The golem's expression softens, and then he reaches out a huge hand, and smaller hands emerge from the end of it. Damian takes the smallest human-looking hand and shakes it. He soon hears Loeth's voice, saying that she told him her herald would be empty, and asks how this happened to him. Damian explains what happened to him in the Yellow Crypt, and how all of his magic was torn from him, and he could no longer wield it. He starts to feel a sense of clarity, and Bella asks him if he really wants to do this. He tells her that he sacrificed everything for knowledge once, and he's willing to do it again. He wants to witness it all. And that's it for Madness of Malifaux. Ended on a bit of a cliffhanger there. But the good news is we're probably getting a ton more lore coming up in the next year. We've got the 10 Thunders Through the Breach book coming up in March. The TOS book should be coming out a couple months after that. And then theoretically there'll be another Malifaux expansion at the end of the year. So keep an eye out on the channel, because I'll definitely be doing videos about all that stuff. So before you go, don't forget to do all the things. Most importantly, I want to say a huge shout out to all the extremely cool kids on Patreon, the Steam-Powered Scoundrels. Make sure you check out their podcast. It's really funny. And they recently start posting their build videos on YouTube. So be sure to go over and give them a sub and say hi. Dogmatize, you can catch him on the Defective Dreadfuls RPG games, and Biclopse Gladiator games. He's got a really cool eBay store where he sells used Malifaux models, so I'll toss a link to that in the description. Make sure you check it out. And thanks for watching.